there's a lot of veterans that are in the NFL right now that are actually on the brink of potentially getting cut, such as a Mark Ingram in Texas and even a Mac Wilson, since they signed Jeremiah. He was a second round draft pick. And Mac Wilson has been the heart of kind of the defense for a while for the Browns. And then there's even a Nick Foles who's behind Andy Dalton and Justin Fields now on the roster. So how do you feel about the NFL changing so drastically that there's so many veterans that are actually not finding spots? Like, what are your thoughts on veterans and how they used to be treated on coaching these younger players? But now these younger players are eclipsing them so fast. How do you feel about the ever-changing NFL like that?
It's just a bottom line business at the end of the day. It just comes down to, do you really want these guys on the bench when they are ready to play now? And especially with the fact that if your team's losing, what are you possibly coaching them with? Well, if I kept Nick Foles on the roster, that coach up Justin Fields, and I already have Andy Dalton, and we're losing games, and Justin Fields is in the game, what is he doing in practice then? Like, how is he still not ready? And it's like, you see these old guys who are bouncing from team to team and all that stuff. And they're usually brought in for veteran leadership and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, if your coach is good enough and you have a good enough culture, you don't really need these veteran guys. Because the fact that, you're young talent who has a ton of potential, who's going out there looking electrifying. Look at the way Lamar Jackson looked in his second year. He was an electrified player. You look at Baker Mayfield, came in and started, had the most touchdown passes since Peyton Manning with his rookie year. That was just like, I'm just used to. I feel like I'm more used to it now just because of how bottom line the NFL is, and they don't care to get rid of players left and right. I'm interested in what you got to say about it, though.
I think it's a mistake because you can't build something on a single player. Whenever there's a Brett Favre that just kept coming back, I think the dude would have played into his 50s, even if he was third string quarterback or something. But you need those older guys to teach these younger guys about what to look at, what to see, because the NFL is different than college. College, you can get away with throwing a deep ball just into triple coverage just because those three defenders are terrible. Those three defenders are not going to be terrible in the NFL. They're going to be great. And greatness leads to other greatness. So if you have a veteran, such as like even a Nick Foles, who won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, their first ever, by the way, who they should not have cut, but that's a whole different conversation. I think you need somebody like that. It's, in my mind, it's equivalent to a 16-year-old driving for the first time compared to somebody that's 35. That 35-year-old is going to know to look a couple of cars ahead for those stoplights, where a 16-year-old is just focusing on the car ahead of it. You need to almost play chess, where these younger players are wanting to sling it, get me a touchdown right now, almost like Madden or something like that, where the older ones know, okay, this one is going to be a 3-yard in route. This next one, maybe a 7-yard out route. And then we'll shoot for a 9 if it's on second down because we have third down to still play with. But at the same time, they chip away. They want to get the defense tired. And that's what a veteran quarterback does compared to a young quarterback who wants to be out there slinging it and making the plays that they were drafted to do because they feel like their career isn't going to go anywhere if they don't make those plays and show up. It's almost like the equivalent of a three-pointer where threes are just Steph Curry. You see Steph Curry three-pointers right there. So you want to have that 50-plus yard bomb to show and electrify people and make them feel like you're needed. And a veteran quarterback does that, as well as teaching them you still got to win.
And I agree with that for sure. I think I'm more of, you don't have to get rid of every veteran, but at the same time, you don't necessarily need them. Because if you can at least keep one of those guys, Andy Dalton or a Nick Foles on the team, and both those guys have been proven winners.
Yeah.
Andy Dalton was never able to win a playoff game, but he was a proven winner in the league. And I feel like, you look at a lot of teams like that, and with the Mac Wilson thing, with the Browns as well, like the Browns are ready to win. Yeah. Now they should have been in the Super Bowl last year, me personally.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Chad Henne's lucky run. So it's like those guys like that, they become expendable when you have talent all across the board. But as far as like the whole teaching thing, like I agree. I completely agree with you. But at the same time, you don't need 1,000,001 teachers, especially if your coach is a former quarterback, or your quarterback coach is a former quarterback, or you're talking to a receiver or a lineman or anybody like that. Like, you can find that mentorship all across the team, whether they play the position or not, just because football is football at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I'm playing if I'm a Julio Jones and my guy coming in as a young guy, I'm going to be like, all right, so don't throw it deep. Even if it looks like I'm in triple coverage, please don't throw it deep because I'm not open. I promise you I'm not open. You could have done that in college. I would have snagged on them guys because they weren't probably going pro, but all these guys are pro. Yeah. I'm making millions to do this. Like you can find that mentorship all over the team. So I wouldn't say get rid of all the old guys. Obviously keep a lot of them on the team, but at the same time, you don't need a ton of them. You don't need to have 2 to 3 guys.
I think Andy Dalton should be let go before Nick Foles, just because how much of Andy Dalton's career was based off of AJ Green making catches. Chad Ochocinco, even whenever he first came in, he had great receivers at all times. So how much of a quarterback's career do you attribute to having great receivers? Because maybe some of these veterans, they didn't have great receivers, and that's why they're not going to be considered Hall of Famers, but they're a veteran. So how great is a quarterback compared to his wide receivers?
Well, you got to also think about it like this. How much of a step up is Andy Dalton compared to Nick Foles? Like how good are each one of these guys? Because if I'm giving Madden ratings, I'm looking at 72 and 71. Yeah. 72 being Nick Foles, 71 being Andy Dalton. Simply because of the fact that, Nick Foles was really good with the Eagles, literally his entire career. Even when Chip Kelly was there, he was still really good with the Eagles. And I don't think he should have been let go either. But that's a whole nother story for another day. But you look at him this year, he got sacked like every time he got on the field. Yeah. The Bears line is terrible. And whether that attributes to him holding on to the ball longer or guys just not getting open, he got sacked a ton. So you have somebody like an Andy Dalton. He looked pretty decent in Dallas. I don't know how he's going to look in Chicago. But as far as when it comes down to how much of these receivers make the quarterback, it's bad how much receivers make quarterbacks. Because you look at guys like a Matthew Stafford, he looked great with Calvin Johnson, but at the same time, he was forcing the ball at every play. Calvin Johnson wouldn't even be open. He'd throw it up to him anyways. And then after Calvin Johnson left, we were kind of thrown off. But Matthew Stafford ended up looking even better without him. I think when it comes to receivers, they make quarterbacks all day, every day, but they're also injured. They also not injured. They also hurt quarterbacks. Yeah. Simply because of the fact that you get used to just throwing it to one guy the entire time. So you're not actually seeing the whole field. He's your first read and can sometimes be your only read. So as far as how much do they help him? They make them, but at the same time they hurt him a lot. And I don't feel like the Bears have a guy like that to where they can hurt him, just because Allen Robinson's really good. I'll say that. Anthony Miller's a pretty good guy. They had weapons across the board, but none of them are ball dominant guys compared to if we were in a situation where we were in, I don't know, Nashville with the Titans and we had a young guy come in. What is he going to do? Throw to Julio Jones. It's going to hurt it, and it will hurt his career. That's why I don't think Odell should be on the Browns, because he hurts Mayfield every single time he's out there. Yeah. But this is Mayfield's 4th year in the league, and he could come at it with a better mindset, being like, I don't give a crap if you're Odell Beckham. Yeah. I thought almost took this team to the Super Bowl, the most irrelevant franchise ever, with the worst colors and the worst name in one of the worst cities in the world. I almost took him to the Super Bowl.
And owners of Haslam.
Yeah.
We also know about the Haslam.
Yeah. So I don't really care if you're Odell. So he might play better, but I don't like star receivers, me personally.
I mean, if you want to reverse it, let's just play both sides real quick. If you want to reverse it, the wide receivers never won MVP.
No.
And that's because the quarterback has to throw the ball to them. Now, whenever receivers start running sweep routes left and right and getting Derrick Henry yards as well as Calvin Johnson receiving yards, then we can talk about that.
But when was the last time a star receiver won a Super Bowl? They haven't.
Yeah.
The last guy to do it, I feel like, was maybe Jerry Rice. Other than that, you look at every Super Bowl team, no star receiver.
Yeah, you're right. And the one that came the closest, most recent, was, I guess you could say, the Vikings, whenever it was the miracle in Minnesota. And that's just Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
He's small. So they had to add it. Yeah. There was an Adam Thielen added in. And so you have both of those, but you don't have a good quarterback at the same time. So those receivers are only as good as the quarterback, and the quarterback's only as good as the receivers. But Tom Brady, I guess, is the exception to this rule, as he's the exception to everything. He started off with, and almost all of his career, not had big name receivers. Nope. He's made big name receivers because where he puts the ball. Nobody knew anybody that was a receiver on his team until he started throwing to them. And so there's always going to be an exception to the rule.
Right.
That exception is Tom Brady. But other than that, a wide receiver, let's just say a wide receiver made Eli Manning's career.
Yes.
Multiple wide receivers. I mean,
Sure,
David
bullcrap.
Tyree, the catch of all times
Sure,
to beat
bullcrap.
the Patriots on the helmet catch. Odell Beckham Jr., the greatest catch to ever exist. And then you also had Cruz, who could just catch like crazy. Eli Manning always had somebody because Eli Manning,
Right.
we all know, trash quarterback. I'm sorry to say it. He won 2 Super Bowls not because of him.
Right.
And even Plaxico Burress. I love Plaxico Burress. He's had people around him, and that's
Right.
the only reason he did that. And whenever they were all gone, that's whenever we saw the true Eli Manning. So there's always going to be a back and forth. You have to have a team before you can be a winner.
I agree with that. And even if you want to throw Tyreek Hill in the mix, I don't really like Tyreek Hill. He's good. He's fast as crap. I just don't see him as a dominating receiver, me personally, just because you have to scheme him open. And even if you want to scheme him open, the defense can still play cover 2 or cover 3. All you gotta do is just keep a guy over top because he's not out jumping somebody.
Mhm.
He's not a big guy.
No.
So with him not being a big guy, and anybody who's ever played Madden knows if you do not scheme Tyreek Hill open, you will not throw him the ball.
No.
I've tried it many times, it never works.
He is not outjumping anybody.
No. So when it comes out, even that Super Bowl, like I said, I wouldn't consider him a dominant receiver just because of how lucky that catch was, as well as that was more of a defensive winning game, and how, like I said, Tyreek Hill, he's not a dominant guy. He's not a guy that I'm like, I have to have him on my team because he can body everybody. I'll take AJ Brown over him. And I'll probably get crap for saying that, but I'll take him. He's a bigger guy. And he's only in his third year this year. And we saw what he did last year. He made Ryan Tannehill, literally. Because Ryan Tannehill didn't have any receivers before him.
True.
And if we're looking at progression as well as that size, it's hard to beat. So we're in agreement when we say star receivers don't win Super Bowls. They just don't. You don't really need them. And you even agreed to say they hurt quarterbacks because Eli Manning looked terrible when he didn't have any quarterback. I mean, he didn't have any receivers out there. Like, heck, even that one freaking lucky that one lucky throw that he made, it was in the triple coverage. You had the out of bounce, a safety over top, and a quarter underneath. There was no other spot he can put that ball. And it's somehow a dime, and the guy catches it and keeps 2 feet in. The luckiest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he broke out of tackles between some of the biggest defensive linemen I've ever seen for the New England Patriots. He somehow broke out of that. He just threw it up. He didn't know what he was doing. He just knew he needed to make a play. And so he threw the ball to the guy that he saw first. Just happened to be David Tyree, who just happened to catch it an inch off the ground against his helmet. There is no other thing other than saying, holy crap, you got lucky. There's nothing else you can say to the guy.
Eli Manning's going to be in the Hall of Fame because of those 2 rings he has.
Yeah, and it's all because of the rings and the wide receivers, not because of his ability to throw the ball.
But it's like, it's one of those things. Like, none of those guys that he threw to were star receivers.
None.
David Tyree disappeared after the Super Bowl.
That's the only time I've ever heard his name was when he caught that ball.
The guy who made that catch in the triple coverage disappeared after the Super Bowl.
Yep.
So it just goes to show, like, you don't need great receivers to win a Super Bowl. You just need guys who are going to go out there and get